Elias was the kind of old man you'd picture in a storybook. Slow-moving, sea-worn, and as steady as the tide itself. Every morning, rain or shine, he'd shuffle down to the rocky shore, his battered fishing net slung over one shoulder. The gulls always greeted him, bold and hungry, but he never hurried. His life was a rhythm, the scent of salt, the call of the sea, the quiet crunch of gravel beneath his boots. But I'll tell you, Elias wasn't truly alone on those endless windswept days. By his side, or sometimes a few stubborn paces ahead, was Buster. Now, Buster wasn't exactly the bravest dog in the village, or the smartest, or even the cleanest. He had one floppy ear, eyes that always looked a little bit skeptical, and a tail that had a mind of its own. But he was loyal. Oh, was he loyal. Buster would sit in the sand, head cocked, as Elias mended his nets or hauled in the day's catch. If the gulls swooped in too close, Buster would give a little whine, maybe even a half-hearted bark, just enough to let them know who was in charge. And every evening, while the fire popped and hissed in the old stone hearth, Buster would curl up at Elias's feet, snoring softly. In that tiny cottage, the world always felt a little less lonely. But life by the sea isn't all gentle tides and quiet sunsets. One autumn afternoon, as the sky turned from grey to something wild and angry, a storm rolled in out of nowhere. The wind howled. Rain lashed sideways. Elias, caught off guard, was fighting to secure his little boat before it vanished into the waves. Suddenly, a huge wave slammed against the bow, yanking a coil of rope from his hands and knocking him flat. He fell hard, his leg twisting beneath him, pain blazing white-hot through his knee. Buster had been hiding under an overturned dinghy, fur-soaked and eyes wide. But as soon as he saw Elias in trouble, he was there, barking, frantic, circling, shoving his nose under Elias's hand. Then, just like that, Buster darted toward the path, barking over his shoulder, as if to say, "Come on, it's time." Elias, gritting his teeth against the pain, managed to say, "Go on, boy, get help." And Buster, he didn't hesitate. He tore through the wind and rain, a scrappy streak of courage against the storm-dark sky. Elias watched him go, his heart squeezed by fear and hope all at once. Minutes ticked by, or maybe it was hours. It felt endless. But then, through the roar of the storm, came voices, shouts, and leading the way, soaked to the bone and still barking for all he was worth, was Buster. In no time, the villagers had Elias bundled up and carried home, Buster trotting beside them, proud as ever, tail wagging furiously, even with exhaustion dragging at his paws. The weeks that followed were slow. Elias healed, but only because Buster was there every step of the way. He'd rest his head on Elias's good knee, those brown eyes always watching. Sometimes Elias would just sit there, stroking Buster's wiry fur, grateful for the silent company. You know, people say dogs are just pets, but if you've ever had a Buster in your life, you know better. They're family. They're guardians. And sometimes they're the only reason you make it through the storm.